Hello, friends and fellow lovers of all things beachy. Welcome to The Beach Speaks, the podcast that shares stories about the beach and our connection to it. I'm your host and beach lover, Paige Friend, helping you reconnect with the beach, return to your soul, and reimagine your life. So grab a cool drink, relax in your beach chair, stick your toes in the sand, and enjoy this episode of The Beach Speaks. Hey, beach lover. Today, I'm chatting with the fabulous Jen Hardy. Now, she does so many things, it's hard to count because she keeps adding to the list. So, let me give you the highlights. Not only is she the voice behind the podcast Fabulous Over 50, but she's also the creative genius behind the wildly popular Jen Hardy Show on YouTube, with her shower thoughts, which are short videos where she shares fleeting ideas, profound insights, and even a few silly dad jokes while literally standing in her shower. Also, if you're into true crime or LawTube or just curious about our justice system in general, check out her series Voices of Justice, where she takes a deep dive into the stories behind the gavel. You know, it's not surprising in just a few months, her content has nearly 500,000 views. Jen is a true beach girl, so much so that after receiving a life-threatening health diagnosis, she instinctively knew that she and her family needed the healing power of the beach in order to get through it. So Jen and her husband and their 7 kids moved from Tennessee to an island paradise off the coast of Florida. In this episode, you'll hear about her journey to the Sunshine State, what life is like living on a coastal island, and the profound healing she's experienced since making the beach her forever home. Let's get on with the show, shall we? Here's Jen. Hey, Jen. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Paige. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, of course. Of course. I can't believe that we haven't done this sooner because we've been podcast besties for, for a while now. You've been so supportive of me and the show, and you're a beach girl, so why not?
Right? I know. We should have done this a long time ago.
Yeah. I know you'll have a lot of stories to tell. The one thing I do want to ask as we start is what I ask all my guests, and that is, how is the beach speaking to you today?
It is beckoning my name and saying, come now. So that's how it's speaking.
Yeah, well, you don't live too far, right?
I don't live too far. I actually live on a barrier island in Florida, which I hadn't even realized Florida had barrier islands. And we live 3 blocks from the beach, which means at night we can actually hear the beach speaking to us, which is the most wonderful thing in the world.
Yeah,
So
I
I love it.
There is something really special about just being able to walk out in your backyard and hear the sound of the ocean. Yeah, it's amazing.
It is. For me, it's the happiest place I could ever be is at the beach.
Yeah, well, tell me about your beach adventures, and, I want to hear the whole thing.
Sure. So I was raised in LA. We were right on the border of LA and Orange County in California. And so we had a cabin in the mountains, and then we went to the beach, every weekend that it was warm. So we got the best of all the worlds, but it was an hour away. We still drove. And then when I moved out on my own, still every single weekend, Corona del Mar was my absolute favorite beach, but I moved to Newport Beach because that was my second favorite and more affordable, because in California, beach property is a lot. And I loved it. But I didn't really love raising kids where we were for a myriad of reasons. So we went to Nashville for 20 years and no beach there. but I liked it. It was calm. It was peaceful. And on our 10th anniversary, my husband and I went to the beach for a week. It was our first week together ever. And because we got married with 5 kids already. So it was a lot. And on our plane ride home, my husband said, we need to save money to visit next year. And I said, no, we're going to save money to move here next year. And 11 months later, we lived on this island we live on now.
Oh, wow. Wow. That sounds a lot like my story. How, I met my soulmate, quit my 9 to 5 and moved to the beach. It's like when you make up your mind that you're going to move to the beach, you make it happen.
Yeah, it's it. That's it. And
Sometimes
I
you
didn't,
don't have any way of resisting it. I mean, it is going to call you regardless.
it takes over. It does. There's just something about it. And I know some people aren't beach people, but when you are, you just have to be. And something for the listeners to know is that, we didn't realize how affordable it was. Granted, prices have doubled in the last 5 years, but where we are, I mean, we live on an island and it was very affordable. It was the same price as the house in Tennessee was. So it's doable.
Well, let me rewind back. You said you were living in California and you had how many kids then? Or did you
So I only
suddenly
had
have
4.
5 kids when you were in Nashville? Or how did that
So I
happen?
only had 4 in California. And when we
Only
moved
had
to
four.
I only had 4. And then I moved to Nashville and went through a, breakup, which is never pleasant. And then I met the man of my dreams, who is the most phenomenal person I've ever known in my whole life. And I had 4, he had 1 when we married. And then we had 2 more. So now we have 7 from 12 to 34.
I can't wrap my brain around that.
Oh, and I've got more. You ready? I've
Okay.
given birth to children in 4 different decades and have children in 3 different generations. Is
Okay.
that crazy? I have an alpha, a Gen Zs, and some millennials. Yeah.
So what is the alpha now?
Alpha is the latest one. He's 12. And under. And it's also known as the COVID generation, which is really sad because a lot of them grew up with the world being strange.
Uh,
I've got friends whose kids never saw anyone's faces besides their parents for the first 2 years of their lives. Can you
wow.
imagine? Because everyone had masks on where they live.
I didn't even
So,
think about that. Wow. Yeah.
yeah, so it's a whole different thing.
Well, so you live in a barrier island. I mean, how remote are you from where? What's close by? It's not Cocoa Beach, but
Yeah, so
Daytona? Cocoa Beach.
Cocoa
Okay.
Beach isn't far. We are very close to Patrick Space Force Base and Cape Canaveral. So because we're of where we live by the Indian River is one of the only places to have manatees. And so we actually swim with manatees and dolphins in nature. And then we can come home and watch a rocket launch from our front porch. One day, and it was the most beautiful thing. This is one of my most beautiful beach memories. My daughter had come in from Germany and they actually have inflatable paddleboards. They have stand-up paddleboards. So my daughter was on one, and my older daughter, and I was on one. I really want her to move here. She also loves the beach. And we were sitting there. There were sea turtles swimming around us. There were dolphins dunking under our paddle boards. And as we're laying there in the middle of all this, a rocket goes off overhead.
No
And I
way.
said, you have got to want to move here. This is, I mean, it's absolute paradise. We've
Yeah.
got a little bit of everything.
I didn't think that. Well, we can see the launches from where we are, but not. I mean, we just see the streak and the ball of fire or whatever. But I imagine you hear it probably.
Oh, our house, oh, yeah, with the boom, our fireplace rattles and our whole house shakes. And it's the most beautiful thing. We love it. It never gets old.
Oh, I know. I'm such a fan of all things space and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
So, well, I guess, where you are, they call it the Space Coast. So,
it is the Space Ghost. Yeah. So we have the best of all worlds right here.
wow, wow. I have to tell Ernie about that. I mean, I can't believe that we haven't been down there. We're just so ensconced in our life up here. And I keep talking about, I want to do like this travel down the coast and just stop at a bunch of beaches along the way. And he said, okay, let's do that. And then we'll go if he has something having to do with his job that's close to the beach. Of course, I'm going. Like 2 weeks ago, he had a conference or some meetings to do in Venice Beach and Fort Myers. And I had said, obviously, I'm going. And that beach is known for shark's teeth. I mean, I think it's called the shark's teeth capital of the
Really?
world or something. Yeah. And everybody's out there looking for shark's teeth. But I guess if you go further out into the Gulf, you can find those megalodon, the really big ones. Yeah, I didn't find any, but I found a lot of shells and I love collecting shells.
Oh, shells are wonderful.
Yeah. So what are your favorite things to do on the beach?
So, much to the chagrin of my children, I like to bring my chair down to where the water is, where my feet are in the water, and just sit and listen to the ocean and breathe that salt air. Or on days when it's calm, I like to go out and just float. I could just float all day. I don't like fighting waves anymore. I used to really love. My husband loves bodyboarding. My kids surf. They go to surf school every day during the summer, the whole summer. That is the highlight of our whole year. We sit there and think, how is this real? It doesn't even feel real. But yeah, just floating in the ocean is the most incredible feeling in the whole world.
That reminds me of a friend of mine, Sue. We were out together, some of our girlfriends, and she's out there floating and we're looking out. And of course, my other friend, Ramona, her spirit animal, one of them is the dolphin. And so naturally, when Ramona's at the beach, the dolphins show up. And of course, a bunch of dolphins show up and they're like swimming all around Sue in her little raft, but she has no clue because your eyes are closed. She's just zoning out, drifting in and out of those waves and stuff. And we're yelling, dolphin, dolphin.
I have a story like that, but it's not
Tell
about
me.
dolphins.
Well, tell me.
It's about the time I stepped on a shark.
Okay. I need to
Okay.
hear this.
So, my best friend, my very best friend, is Japanese. And we were neighbors in Tennessee. And then we moved here. She moved back to Japan. But we still talk every Saturday because she's a phenomenal person. And she doesn't go in the ocean because Japan doesn't have beaches, like we do, even though, they're an island. So, and she doesn't like the salt water because it burns. But she went with us because she was being a good sport. And she went in a little bit and then she said, no, I'm going to just sit up here. And so she and her daughter were up on land and my kids and I were in the water because if we're at the beach, we have to be in the water. And we were standing about 20 feet apart in a triangle, right? There's 1, 1, 1. And put a pin in that. When I was a kid, I used to go learn about oceanography and do all these things. So I've touched sharks and I've touched stingrays and I know what they feel like. And sharks have a very unique feel, their skin. It's kind of icky and slimy and pokey. And so knowing that, I was walking and I stepped on something that was the size of a log, but it was a shark.
Oh,
And I looked up and there were fins everywhere. Fun fact, a group of sharks is called a shiver, for those of you who didn't know. We were in the middle of a shiver of sharks. And it was because where we are, they'll come very shallow. So I called the kids, didn't tell them why. I said, hey guys, let's go see Amina. We go in, we look out, they're everywhere. And she said, oh yeah, they've been there this whole time. I just figured you're American. You swim with them all the time. And I said, no. And if you ever see that again, you got to tell somebody because, we got out and then we tried to warn people and yeah.
a shiver of sharks.
A shiver of sharks.
What type of shark were they?
I honestly don't know.
Who
I did not.
who cares? They were sharks. We don't want to know.
They weren't the kind that bite you when you step on them. Oh, and I have a safety fact about sharks. Before we moved here, I did a lot of research because I'm a researcher, and I was terrified of the sharks because in California we didn't really have sharks when I was a kid, and I learned a lot of things. Number one is the most shark bites in America are at tips of fingers and toes, and the reason for that is it's from people hanging their hands over boards and wiggling them, and they look like little fishies. And then we talked to my kid's surf school instructor because he's at one with the beach. He's the most zen with the beach person I've ever met. And my son was terrified of sharks when we first started. And he said, well, first of all, be thankful they don't walk on land because that would be scarier. Second of all, this is their place and we're joining it, right? But also, they don't want to pick a fight. We don't have great whites here. Okay, so I'm not talking about great whites. But he said they don't want to fight. And most of them are 6 to 8 feet. They're not much bigger than you are. So they're not going to aggressively come after you. The only time is if you fall on them or do something to hurt them. Then they'll
step on them.
Step on them. They'll defend themselves. And so, yeah,
Well,
It was
yeah, it stands to reason that they would want to defend themselves.
right. And so we've got kids, 70 kids at a time on surfboards out there. And every once in a while there's a shark and he will call everyone in and say, hey, there's a shark. If you want to go back out, you can. And some boys will go back out and they don't get bit.
I was talking to one of our granddaughters about that because she was in surf school about what do you do when there's a shark? And she says, oh, yeah, we see sharks and we just come back in and wait a little while. And then some of us go back out, just like you said. And she said she was the same way. And it's interesting because she would normally, I would think, be freaked out about it because she
Right.
freaks out about other things. But in this case, she's like, no, they just kind of swim around and they don't really want to bother you if you don't bother them. And I went, okay.
Yeah. And I think, you have to get into that mindset because if you don't, you're not going to go.
I want to know more about how the manatees and the dolphins and did you say the turtles
And
all
the
kind
turtles.
of was, and then did they all want to gather so they could see the rocket launch? Is that why
I know,
they
right?
were all
Yeah. Well,
together?
it makes me wonder because if the launch shakes my house, they've got to feel it in the water. And you wonder, what do these animals think? You
Yeah.
know, because I mean, I guess they're getting used to it now, but that's got to be really strange. But yeah, it's really incredible. We have a place called Sebastian Inlet down here. It's about a half an hour away from me, and it's like a huge tide pool, like the size of a football field. Okay, the length of a football field, but it's a circle. And then the outlet of it goes to where the Indian River and the Atlantic Ocean meet. The water's pretty churny right there, but it's, freshwater, saltwater, they're all coming together. And the manatees love to be right there for some reason. And they'll come in sometimes into the pool.
Mm.
My daughter swam with a manatee for 45 minutes one day. They just sat there next to each other and, watched each other. And it was the most beautiful thing. They're very interesting animals and, so gentle. They're gentle giants. And it's,
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
even tell you, Paige, how incredible it is.
When I got my scuba certification, it was up in Crystal River. So we were in the fresh water and we had the opportunity to dive with the manatees. They had these tour groups that would go snorkeling with them and really not really supposed to swim with them. They don't really want you interacting with them a whole lot because some people don't know. Anyway, respect the
Yeah.
wildlife.
Yeah.
But
We don't touch them.
no, we were like, yeah, we had sped through our whatever we were learning for the day, and our dive master said, hey, we've got extra time. You guys just went through that. Let's go on out and see if we, find some manatees. And so we were way under the water, like their level, and swimming around. And they're just the sweetest things. And you can hear the little crunch, crunch, crunch as they're munching on the seagrass. It's a really unique experience. But are they there all the time? Or is it just when the water is that certain temperature where they
So they're
okay.
here all the time.
Okay.
Now, there are neighborhoods that have water where they come in certain times of the year and they're in their little neighborhood. Oh, we wanted a house over there and that isn't where we ended up.
Yeah.
And for some reason, but then they come up in there a certain time of year. So they're really easy to see. But they're in the river, yeah, all the time. This is where they live. It's one of the only places in the world that they live. And
I did not know
just
that. Okay, there's another place that we need to road trip to.
yeah,
Yeah, because we
exactly.
had taken a friend who's from Phoenix and he's wanting to see all this Florida stuff now that he's moved here. And we said, oh, we got to go to the springs. And we went to Three Sisters Springs where typically all of the manatees gather at a certain time and you can snorkel around them and there's usually hundreds of them. And we got there and there weren't any. They were
Wow.
gone. And I thought this is really weird. Somebody said there are two if you paddle like another quarter mile or half mile and they have markers on them. So I guess they were following these two and they had released them out of rehab. And the intention was that they would go and join these others and then swim out when it was time, that they would like rejoin their family, the group.
Right.
And the problem was every time they tried to swim up the river to meet the gang and reacquaint themselves, there were so many people they
Oh.
got scared and they would just turn around and go back.
Oh.
I know, it was so sad. So we were just really calm in our kayaks and paddle boards, and we just, we didn't move or anything. And then they came around and they swam around us, and they had this little flag, like I guess was attached to their tail and kind of floated, and so you could see where they were going. And I just felt so bad because someone had said if they don't leave here soon, they're going to have to remove them and take them back to the aquarium, or I don't know what they were going to do because the water was going to get too cold. And there is no seagrass for them to feed on. And that was one reason why they all left, because one of the hurricanes that came through last year really decimated a lot of the land around there, and there wasn't really much for them to eat. So they were having to go back out into the ocean. So I guess that's what happened. And I just felt so sad for these two little ones. I can't remember their names. They even had names, of course.
Oh.
So to know that there is a place where they can go and we can go and see them is
Oh, yeah.
wonderful. Yeah.
It's so amazing. And there's no guarantee. When my older kids come and visit and we say, "Oh, there's this place we can go see dolphins." We take them there, and every once in a while they aren't there. And it's so, but it's nature. So you never quite know what you're going to get. But then
Yeah.
you get one day like we did with everything and you think, "Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah."
Dolphin are fun. They will appear, and well, let me circle back on this. I'm usually not looking for them. My husband is always looking out at the water, and he can spot them from miles away, because when I am on the beach walking, I'm looking at my feet. I'm looking at the water over my feet and the shells. I'm always looking down, and occasionally, I'll look out obviously at the water, and I'm walking looking at shells, and then of course Ernie will say dolphin, and I'm looking up, where, and so I'll just point my camera or like run a video and just like hold it there, even though I don't see anything, because invariably I will capture something in the frame and then think, oh, yay, I saw it.
My husband's like that too, and he can point things out. And I don't know if he sometimes makes it up, but he'll say, "Oh, look, there's a tarpon. There's a this. There's a that." And yeah,
Did you want to be a marine biologist? You said you were really interested
I
in the
really
sciencey stuff.
did want to be a marine, but well, back in the day, I'm probably one of the only kids who ever wanted to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. That was my goal. So marine biology was my second choice. Yeah, and I was a psychology major with a philosophy minor, and so I just overthink everything. It's basically what that is.
My daughter switched from a math major to psychology, and she is studying to be a therapist. Yay, because we all need therapy. It will be perfect. And I'm a huge fan of the humanities. I went to a liberal arts college. I majored in English, had absolutely no idea what I was going to do with that. People would say, "Oh, you're going to teach, right?" And I went, "No, that's the last thing I want to do," because I can just envision myself in the classroom trying to get these kids to behave. And I don't know that they would learn anything, which kind of reminds me, you homeschool your kids, right? Or have
I
you?
do. This is our 25th year of homeschooling.
All right, tell me about that, because I've just been reading some horrific news about how our kids can't read, and how we learned and all of that. And I guess there's some curriculum that has a completely different way of teaching reading.
Yeah, education has changed in our country. And there are probably vast political reasons that I have no idea and we don't even need to talk about. But things have changed. They've taken cursive out of the schools, which means that companies like Eddie Bauer and Coke are changing their logos because the kids can't read them. And also, they can't read our founding documents, which is why I kept teaching my kids cursive throughout the choice that the schools have made. Yeah, we do things very old school. I teach the kids like I learned back in the 80s and 70s, actually, because those things served me well. And I find that, people question homeschooling. Like, do I think I'm a better teacher? Absolutely not. Kudos to anyone who can have 20 kids in their classroom and teach them. I have the utmost respect. And do I think everyone should homeschool? That's another thing. People assume that. And no, I do not. It depends on your kids. But yeah, we teach things the old-fashioned way, and it seems to serve my children very well. All five of mine got scholarships to go to college. They got into every college they applied for. And the one thing whether you homeschool or not, we taught our kids how to be self-sufficient, which is a thing that a lot of kids don't learn now. And every one of the ones that have gone to college came back and said, "Oh my gosh, thank you. I hated it when you made me do my own laundry and cooking and whatever." But they all were the only people in their dorm to do it. My
Yeah.
18-year-old son would put on dinner parties. He was the most popular guy in town because he could do that. And so I think, it gave them opportunities to learn some different things. And I love it. I do.
Well, and I mean, I don't know what your kids are interested in, but I would imagine just being in like nature's playground here that they would have a natural inclination to study the sciences or whatever. But at least you have this hands-on playground, like I said, of learning there at the beach. That wow.
Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah, and surf school, and then they get the tech from the podcasting and YouTubing thing. So one of my kids is a podcaster, one's a YouTuber because we do that. But then yeah, also they have the nature and everything and we live in a neighborhood that's like the Wonder Years. We have sidewalks and they can go walk around the neighborhood and bike and it's safe and walk the 3 blocks to the beach and
Yeah,
it's like a dream. It really is.
it is. Well, let's talk about podcasting a little bit because you have a fabulous podcast. I love that word. I use it a lot. And you have several actually going. Just tell me a little bit about what you're doing now with your podcast.
So, Fabulous Over 50 is a podcast for women specifically. Men can listen because aging isn't always fun. And I wanted to take something that wasn't always fun and make it fun because the alternative to aging is worse. So, we're going to throw some glitter at it and have fun with it. And as women, a lot of us are coming into a new time in our life, right? Where we've seen ourselves as so and so's mom or so and so's wife, or we have this job. And in this age, we're changing. And so I'm hoping that it can kind of help people find their direction and to find themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that resonates with me. And I think a lot of the people that listen to this podcast are in that kind of change of life where, yeah, they're leaving a corporate job, but they want to move to the beach, or the kids are grown and yeah, we're just kind of in that transition stage and trying to figure that out. And you have it, is it on Fabulous Over 50 that you've been interviewing these judges?
So I took a little detour on my podcast because I started a YouTube channel that's gone off the rails. And so I thought I'd bring some of that into the podcast. And so I've been interviewing some women that are over 50 that are judges because people on YouTube are very into that. And these women, they are phenomenal. And I've got a man judge coming up next because he's very different from the 2 women that I've interviewed. But I think it just goes to show that no matter where you start, you can get where you want to go because both of the women I've interviewed so far started off in demographics and in places where you would think their destination was set, right? And they made choices and their families made choices to help them grow. And now they're doing extraordinary things. And I think that's important for us to know. Like the last one I interviewed, she was 33 when she went to law school. It's not too late. You don't have to go at 18. And in fact, going back now, you would have all the time you didn't have before to devote to it. Mm-hmm. So it's, and the world's going a bit mad right now, let's face it. And so it's fun to highlight some people that are doing great things for our country and for the world.
Yeah.
We give people a little bit of hope.
We definitely need more of that. We need the good news. Tell me the good news. I've had enough of the bad. Getting back to the beach, if you had the choice to live on the West Coast or the East Coast, would you stay here on the East Coast or?
Hands down.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. I kind of figured that would be your answer. I was just curious of what is it about the West Coast that you like and maybe you don't like? So those are people who are, well, I can't move to the East Coast. Tell me what the West Coast is like, because maybe I want to go there.
Yeah. So, people hear Florida and they think Florida man, they think crazy. So I'll just give it quick. The reason that you think that is because our law is open to where if we have completely open records. And so if anyone's arrested, it's public record. And so that's why everyone thinks we have more arrests. We don't. They're just public. So there's that. Florida is hot, and we do have gators, which is a thing we don't hear because I live on an island. And so, you just stay away from the water. We have hurricanes. But the nice thing is, you get a warning for a hurricane, you can leave. We call it a hurrication. So we either, if it's a Cat 1 or 2, we stay, we have a hurricane party, or we have a hurricane, we go somewhere. California, you have earthquakes. You cannot plan for an earthquake. And they would say, we used to say when I lived there, we have the 4 seasons of California are earthquakes, flood, fire, and drought. And there's not water native to Southern California. It is a desert. People have created things there, but if for some reason the water was cut off, there would be no water. That's really depressing. But that is part of the reason I like Florida. We have lots of water, and I can plan for an emergency. So those are my, silly. It's affordability, Paige.
Sure.
If I was going to choose, it would be mostly affordability because I can live 3 blocks from the beach in Florida and couldn't live 3 miles from the beach in California for what I pay for here.
No.
So,
I remember the beaches in Southern California. What beach was it?
So Corona Del Mar is my favorite.
Okay. Huntington Beach, is that somewhere near
I spent
there?
a lot of time in my childhood at Huntington.
Okay.
That was my mom's favorite beach. I remember 6 years old, waves 6 and 7 feet. She'd say, "Go, see you later." I'd go by myself all day. She didn't watch me. She did her own thing. She drank, because back then you could bring a cooler of beer and just sit there and drink it out of the can. That's what she did. And I did my thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I don't have a fear. A lot of people have fears of the water, but I was always taught that, it's nature. It's good. You're going to be fine. And
yeah, water. I have a special relationship with water. I mean, it is in my nature, and it is what's formed my life in a lot of ways. And I have a memory of visiting Huntington Beach. My father grew up in Southern California, outside of LA. And I don't know, some distant cousins or something still lived there. And they lived at Huntington Beach. They had a beach house where you just like walk out and you're on the beach.
There.
Yeah. This was many years ago. And I was thrilled. I thought, this is heaven. This is magical. I can't believe somebody lives here and you can just like go out. And after eating, I don't know how many pancakes, this cousin or whatever was just making these pancakes like one after the other, and I'm just scarfing them down. And then I'm like running out. Probably not the best idea to have a belly full of food, but you're going out into the ocean. But, who cares? I'm a kid. And I'm running out there. And when you say those 5-6 foot waves, I mean, I was probably not even 5 foot tall then. And seeing those waves crashing over and thinking, this is so much fun. And like you dive under. And then, of course, try to keep it from rolling you around too much. And you're just like topsy-turvy and trying to figure out, okay, which is up, which is down. But yeah, no fear. I mean, it was just a blast and just wave after wave. I didn't want to get out of the water. That's my best memory of the beach there. Yeah. And I know the water's cold, but, as a kid, you
don't care.
No.
You don't care at all as a kid. No. No, my kids swim in our pool year round and it's not heated. And I mean, it doesn't get cold. Well, I mean, it's in the 60s and they don't care. We're swimming Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about this. What do you call it? Hurricane?
Hurricane. Yes.
So give me an example of.
So when Dorian was coming, we had just moved here a few months before. And so we were going to stay. All our neighbors said that they were going to stay. It was just going to be a Cat 1. And then at the last moment, they moved it up to a 5. And it was coming slowly. I don't know if you remember. It was moving like a mile at a time, but it was building strength in that. And so we thought, this is our first year. We know everyone says they're staying, but we're going to go. So we went to Gainesville. We stayed in a nice little hotel. We took the kids to do some different things. We had a really good time. Came back and realized all our neighbors had left.
Oh.
And also everything was fine. It was fine. But where we are, because we're on an island, we have bridges that they call causeways. And when there's a big storm, when the winds hit a certain thing, they close them because they move. It's not safe to be on them. And so the only problem is with leaving, you might not be able to get back. And so that's why some people stay if it's a 1. It's really not that bad. The winds are in the 70s. It's okay. I've actually given webinars from my office when in the middle of a hurricane, and I'm showing people the camera and Yeah, they think it's crazy. But, I think when you live here, it's a whole different thing. It's
Yeah.
like being in the water with the sharks, right? You just have to say, this is part of my reality and I can't be afraid of it. It's part of nature. And I'll do what I can to keep my family safe, though. Keeping my
Yeah.
family safe is important.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you're on an island, so like you said, when they close that causeway, you're stuck there. And you can't get out if things get really hairy,
Right. So best
gnarly.
to leave early and
Yeah.
just, keep the kids safe.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how much can you protect your property and all of that during a storm like that? You really can't. I mean,
Right. So
it.
the decision we made when we came here was that our things are just things. And at one point, we probably will lose them, and that's okay. And I think if you make that decision, it makes it a lot easier, right? Because the people are what's important. You can replace anything in your house. I mean, even pictures now we have digitally, like everything is replaceable.
Mhm.
So, I have a van. We can take things that we really want, but we just have to look at it that way. Our two kids that are home both have Asperger's. And so if we say we're fleeing a hurricane, we've got to get to
Oh my
safety.
gosh, that'd be the
Okay,
worst thing to
what?
say, I suppose.
Right. I mean, that's just a panic for us, but also intense panic for them. And so if you call it a hurricane, though, this is exciting. This is something new, and it's an opportunity we have because the hurricane's coming. It puts it in a whole different perspective.
Yeah. Do you think being at the beach has helped with their Asperger's? I mean, I know there's various forms of how sensitive one is, and do you think that it has a way of calming or being any kind of positive effect on
So
their.
we could talk about health forever. Yes, I think health mentally, absolutely. Being able to surf, there's something about my 14-year-old daughter. When she is on that surfboard, she'll just sit there all day. Sometimes she doesn't even surf in, she just sits on the board. And that is her calm space. And my son, too, sometimes he'll cry when we take him, but then he cries to leave because it's also his space. And he had had a rash when we lived in Nashville for years that wouldn't go away. When we came to look at houses, we went to the beach, and when we got home, we realized it was gone. And we thought, well, that's interesting. And then a few months later, it came back, and then we moved here, and it was gone. And then there was a few months that we didn't go to the beach because we had some issues, and it came back. So it's the water is keeping it. But the biggest thing the beach has done is that in 2018, my doctors told me that I had a year to live because I have lung problems. I have lots of chronic things. And so part of the reason we moved here was because I wanted to set my family up somewhere happy and peaceful so that when they didn't have me, they had something. And I'm still here. And I attribute a lot of that to the beach. It's a lot less stressful, but also I'm breathing in that salt water. That's part of the reason we moved so close.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm better than I've been in a really long time. And I think the beach has literally saved my life.
Yeah, I
So,
would
yeah.
definitely say that. I can't imagine being told you have a year to live and then
Yeah.
what do you
It
what
was
do
a
you do?
lot.
That must have been. I can't even. What was that like? I mean, how do you wrap your brain around that?
It well, I had been sick for a while,
Uh-huh.
long story. But yeah, within 1 week, I had one doctor tell me that he was just gonna give me pain medicine to keep me comfortable because I only had a year. And then my lung doctor told me that they were gonna give me a permanent trach, like, in my neck, like a tube in my neck, and carry a thing to breathe for me on my back. And like it was no big deal. And that was just gonna happen till I was gone. And no, I didn't want any part of that page.
Mm-mm.
I did not. And not that I mean, I'm not a firm believer that if you believe it, you're going to get healthy because I don't think that's fair. If that was true, people wouldn't be sick. But I do have a firm belief in
Mhm.
doing everything we can to keep ourselves as healthy as we can and being positive so that, because you never know what's going to happen.
I know. And your husband has some health issues, and has it helped him as well?
It helps him. Yes.
Mm.
The beach is his happy place too.
There you go. I
Yeah.
mean, if
So
anything, just the way it sets your mind at ease and relaxes you
absolutely.
and all of that can work wonders on the rest of your wellness, right?
Right.
I think that's probably why so many people are happy when they're at the beaches. It's like, how can you not be?
Yeah, and that's why people spend, they save all year to spend money just to go for a few days because that's how healing it is psychologically. I think, it's amazing what it can do. And it really grounds us.
It
It's just,
does.
you know,
Well, I think it's a good place to wrap things up because you and I can go on forever on different stories, and we probably will. So I just wanted to ask you about making a move here to the beach or spending time here at the beach. What is it you want people to know most?
Life is short, and you can do anything you want to do. I just had this epiphany yesterday, actually driving in my car thinking, oh my goodness, everyone has the same amount of hours in the day. Everyone has the same whatever. And you can truly do anything you want. And if you want to live at the beach, you can make it happen. Do some research. Like I said, there are very affordable places to live at the beach. And you'll be so, if you're a beach person, you'll be so happy you did.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Well, thanks, Jen, for coming on today. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to the next time that we talk beach.
Thank you so much for inviting me. This has been a pleasure.
Absolutely. The beach is speaking. Are you listening? This conversation really resonated with me. From her meeting her soulmate and finding her forever home at the beach in Florida, her joy in all things podcasting and staying true to herself. Because when you see her all blinged out in sequins and sparkles, you might think, well, that's just her brand. But let me tell you, she is just as sparkly and luminous on the inside. She still has some health challenges that would make anyone want to curl up in bed and not face the world. But Jen has a way of moving through it all with grace and ease, using that positive energy and healing we get when we're at the beach. Do you have a story about finding healing at the beach? Feel free to share it in a message or a voicemail. I'd love to hear about it. And if you think your story could benefit the listeners and you want to share it on the podcast, let me know. The beach and I are here for you. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Beach Speaks. If you enjoyed what you heard, please spread the beachy vibes and share it with a friend. Because, let's be honest, who doesn't want more beach in their lives? And if more beach is what you crave, go to thebeachspeaks.com and sign up for my newsletter. It's an easy way to stay in the know, collect some tips and travel hacks for your next beach adventure, and find out what I'm doing at the beach. And if you want to dive deeper into the ocean of support, consider becoming a Beach Speaks Patreon member. Your contribution helps keep the podcast afloat, and you'll enjoy some cool perks that only our Patreon family gets to enjoy. The beach is speaking. Are you listening?